Morning guys, I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters and the Pathfinder School. What I thought I'd do today is walk you through the process of how I make a packable draw knife as a production tool that we're going to be able to sell on our website. And I've been developing these packable draw knives for a long time and hand forging them, just one here and there. And I've sold a few of them to some people. I've given a couple of them away, and I've got a couple of them myself. And a lot of people are asking for these things and they want to purchase them from our website. Well, something that's hand forged that takes an hour or two to make is pretty difficult to sell if you're trying to make anything for your time and labor. So you've got to figure out some ways to shortcut that. And that's the way production companies that make tools can sell tools at affordable prices that are made in the US. So what I've done is I've given a drawing of a packable draw knife to my father, who has set it up with our water jet company to water jet these out of 1095. So I'm getting them as a blank form in 1095. And now I'm going to show you how I turn this blank into a workable draw knife that can be sold to the public. And we're hoping for right around the $30 mark. Stay with me. Okay, so here's a pretty up close look at the blank itself for you guys. Water jet leaves some ridges on things during the water jet process. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of knock those off, or most of them off. And then I'm going to clean the rust off of it where it's been sitting outside and collected surface rust from oxidization. It says high carbon steel 1095. Then I'm going to go ahead and close these loops down. And that may be a change that we make in the designs. I may have them already closed down. I don't ever want them to be a solid hole without the ability to move, because I may decide to change the design, or I may find out something works better than something else. I may want to use the same design and bring this down straight to be able to put handles on this thing. There's a lot of things I can do with this design as it stands, so I don't ever want to close that. But for now, what I have been doing, and here's one that's in process right now that just came out of heat treat, I'm closing the loops and then creating my 25-degree bevel on one side and then heat treating them and then doing the final finish. So let's take this one and talk about the entire process. All right, so the first thing I do is, again, I just knock those ridges off. And I do that pretty quick and dirty. And then I knock the ridges off on the inside of the bevel. On the back side, and straighten that out to a flat grind. And then I do the blade side. Just make sure that that edge, I try to get nice and straight and flat. I want to get rid of all the bumps because that's my lead edge. Okay, now I'm going to just take a sanding block and knock the surface rust off of this thing. Just like this. And then just use a hammer on the anvil to close these two eyes while it's still in an annealed and soft state. Now once I've closed that up, I've got a jig set up here that has a 25-degree bevel angle on it with just a couple of screws, wood screws, to hold this thing where I want it. For the initial grinding process. And I just try to make sure that I've got an even amount sticking up above when I get this thing screwed down. It's going to stay screwed down in this jig until I get ready for the initial heat treat anyway. Then I'm going to come in here on a belt, start grinding that bevel in. Now because I'm removing lots of material very quickly, I have to continuously cool the workpiece. So I'll grind it. Then I'll come in and cool it and then go back to grinding. Remember that this is pretty much a single bevel grind on a draw knife with just a little bit of a micro bevel on the back side, and it's 25 degrees is what I found works the best for this. So we'll just continue to remove this down to where we get down to about a 1/16 of an inch here, and then I'll get back to you. So what I'm doing now is I'm avoiding turning this material blue and trying to get a nice level grind across this piece. Okay, so I don't want to take this down too far on this edge. I want to leave myself about a 1/16. Because when I heat treat it, if the edge is too thin, it's going to become weak. So the important thing now is to give myself just a little bit of meat left on that piece before I heat treat it. Now we're going to remove it from the jig, take it over to the furnace, to the propane forge, and we're going to heat treat it. Turn on the gas, heat her up. Over here and run it on the magnet. Quench it. Agitated quench for about 2 minutes. Okay, so now we've got it out of the forge. We have cooled it, and now it is hardened. Okay, we have hardened it with the heat treat process. If we wanted to make this metal softer and we were making a knife blade or something like that, we would want to temper it next and heat it up to a certain temperature and leave it at that temperature for a certain amount of time, like 425 degrees for 2 hours for like a knife blade. But because we're making more of a chisel type tool, we want this to be very, very hard and to hold an edge for a long time. So we're not going to temper this blade at all. The heat treat is enough. We'll have a Rockwell on this blade somewhere probably between 60 and 65 as is. We've got this metal pretty much as hard as it can get without quenching it in water. So we've got what we want here. Now we got to put it back on the jig and do our final grind. And that's why we left ourselves some meat. So when we do our final grind down to our cutting edge and our micro bevel, we have some meat to work with there. Okay, so again, as I'm screwing it down the jig, I'm making sure that I've got an even amount sticking up above the jig. And this is an actual knife jig that I've just repurposed for these draw knives. And now we're ready to do our final grind, which is a very similar process. We just have to be much more careful now not to heat up the blade and turn it color. Our first pass will remove most of our forging marks and get us to a shiny edge again. Now, I'm watching these sparks because when they start to jump over the blade or bounce off the top of the blade, I know I'm getting thin. They're not going in between anymore. So I know that my blade is the thinness that I need it, especially right in here. I've got a little area of sticker here. So I'll give that a little bit more attention until I get those sparks jumping over the top of the blade there. And you can see that happening right there. That's getting my blade exactly where I want it. There's a little bit of finesse to this, for sure. Okay. So once I've got that blade to where I want it, now I'm going to take it off the jig. And from here I'm going to freehand the micro bevel on the back side. So I'll take out one screw and that will release it from the jig. Put that screw back in there so I don't lose it. Put that aside. And now I'm going to come in here and turn the blade up on end and just freehand a very small micro bevel at a pretty straight up and down angle on the back of this blade. You can just barely even see it. And that's exactly what I want. Once I get that, then I'm going to feel for that hairline burr on the blade. I'm not even really pushing this against the platen. I'm barely touching it for that micro bevel. Feeling for that burr. Feeling for that wire edge. When I feel that, then I'm going to take it over to the buffer. Now we're going to bring this tool over to the buffer. A little bit of white compound on there. Hit the leading edge first. Flip it over. Roll that burr back and feel my edge. At that point, I should be pretty sharp without having to do much of anything else. Now, after I've wiped the tool off with an oily rag, every one of these tools gets tested. That's a nice drawing knife right there. Beauty. Okay, folks, well, I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School, and I appreciate you joining me today out here at the Pathfinder Forge and the Pathfinder School classroom for a quick video on how I make the Pathfinder packable draw knife that we will be selling soon on our website. I've got about 12 or 14 of these finished and ready to go to SRO. I've got another 50 blanks that just came back from Waterjet at SRO to pick up to bring out here to have my son finish up and work on. So we'll be trickling this into our website as we can, but I wanted to show you the process of how these are made and how they're tested and what the finished product looks like on the video today. I appreciate your views, I appreciate your support. I thank you for everything you do for our school, for our family, for our business, for all of our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends, and I'll be back with another video as soon as I can. Thanks, guys.